Hello and welcome, everybody. Well, football gives you life. Football very much kills you straight afterwards. What do you do when all of your dreams and everything you've worked for a whole season turns into an absolute nightmare? Excuse the mood. Today we're going to try and talk about it as best we can, but this is what football does to you. As you can see today, welcome to the Forever Bristol City podcast. We are joined by Dave Potier, the host, who's going to take over soon enough, and the legend that is Dave Febbs, the three Daves in the house. So, Dave Potier, what did you think of the game?
Um, I went in with low expectations, so my low expectations were realised. Sheffield had finished the season 22 points ahead of us. Most seasons that would probably guarantee the championship, but that wasn't to be for them. We'd gone into the game on poor form. As a result of last night, it made it even worse. 3 goals scored in the last 4 games, 12 conceded. Not good. Did Mr. Langford ruin it? What came first, the chicken or the egg? What came first, the foul or playing the ball? At 1-0, at 90 minutes, we're still in with a chance. At 3-0, it reminded me of that film Escape to Victory, where Russell Osman's in the dressing room at half-time on that film, and they're 4-1 down. And he says, we can still do it. Really? I don't think so. Season over for me.
You're in control.
Dave, Fevs, what do you think?
Yeah, I think just go back to your earlier thing about low expectations. I think over 2 legs, undoubtedly Sheffield United are going to be favourites. I think in a one-off game, certainly Ashton Gate, you'd probably think, yeah, I think we're in with a really good chance here. But yeah, I guess a lot of that was dashed last night. I think it's not over because anything can happen in the second leg. I even say just in a normal game, that their keeper could come flying out, get sent off in the first minute. Is a completely different game then. So, but yeah, we're gonna have to go out there and put on a pretty good performance, whether it's against 11 men or whether hopefully we get a referee who might even it back up the other way from last night. But I thought in general for half an hour we played pretty well. I thought we were probably just on top, and then gradually Sheffield United got on top. Obviously, then red card, penalty changes the whole manner of the game, and I just hoped we'd kind of hang in there. I hope we'd give it a little bit more of a go than what we did second half as well. I didn't think we really threatened them in any way. I can only remember 2 balls going in the box in the second half, so that was a little bit disappointing that we didn't give it a go, because with 10 men, it's not to say you can't go and get something, but yeah, ultimately disappointed.
No, very true. Dave Tubbs, I thought you got the lineup wrong myself. What did you think?
I don't understand what he sees in Viner as left centre back. I would much prefer to have Roberts on the left and Viner on the right. To be honest, the U decision, this is a whole season thing. I think putting you there to start the game was the right decision over Tanner. But as the game wore on, you could see the issues coming, essentially, in that respect. And what you saw is a team that was in the playoffs that shouldn't be having to make those decisions in the most important areas. And Sheffield United understood it. They understood fully what our weaknesses were, and they exploited it. And for me, I wouldn't have gone with that lineup. And I was quite shocked that Urfi didn't start, I have to say. He's been central to everything good we've done over a number of weeks. And for him not to start yesterday, I didn't really understand it. There's something to be said for giving Mehmeti a chance and saying this is your moment, but I don't think he took it yesterday.
Yeah, Dave Tubbs has picked up Fevs. Sorry, just getting confusing. Dave Tubbs has picked up points that I felt. And Mehmeti starting ahead of Urfi. Dave Tubbs said, his moment. Well, he's had his moment for a couple of months and he hasn't scored for about 4. What did you think of the lineup when you saw it?
I think for me the biggest issue is the Viner at left centre back, and it just doesn't suit him there. I think there's probably some credit goes to Sheffield United, which I guess we'll move on to later, around why that doesn't suit him there. But I go back to, admittedly, my kind of first season back watching City after my kind of wilderness years, where we had Adam El Abd, who we signed from Brighton, and Adam El Abd was a decent right back, right-sided central defender, but we played him on the left, and I can only assume he had a glass eye because he could only look over one shoulder, and he constantly got exposed by balls going over the top of him, which I guess just those different angles. And once again, I'm only speculating here. I think it's maybe upset Rob Dickie a bit as well, because Dickie's been used to having him on the right side every single time, and now he's looking the other way. And it's all little positionings and spacings and things like that. But I thought that was I'm not going to say he got it wrong. That's not what I'd have done. I'd have played Roberts. To hell with whether Roberts, is good, bad, or indifferent. He's had good games at left centre back. He's had bad games at left centre back. That's his best position probably. I'd have played him there, and I'd have kept Viner at right centre back. What he did with the rest of the team probably wouldn't have mattered so much then. I was surprised he didn't play Earthy, but I can kind of see why he might have played Mehmeti, because I think he maybe wanted someone a bit more of a dribbler, maybe against Sheffield United, who normally kind of defend quite kind of deep. And
if he had a little bit, Fevs, if he had a little bit more tactical nous, and we're sort of saying that's what Wilder displayed, certainly when he made the triple substitution. If he was a little bit more self-assured in himself, you could almost play with a 4, couldn't you? You could go Tanner, Viner, Dickey, McCrory, because McCrory
could have done lots of things.
So he doesn't. He plays players at right-footed left wing back.
You make a strong point, but the issue is not yesterday as such, because ultimately, if you've been playing that formation, and we spoke on this podcast numerous times about the best 11, it fits that that team. But it's as soon as you get past the best 11, it starts to break down slightly. But they kept getting results. And what you saw in a way was that breakdown of you're just getting over the line, just stumbling over. And realistically, that's what we did. Why did we face Sheffield United yesterday? Because we stumbled over the line. We didn't need to play them yesterday. And yes, I would have liked to have seen a 4 at the back at some point. But it's a massive call to say, right, we've gone from Christmas to this point playing 3 at the back. We're going to change it now. And I wouldn't hold that against him as such, but I do agree with your point.
Yeah, I think, typically, I think second half we came out, we made the subs, and I know we're jumping ahead here, Dave, but we basically went kind of like 3-4-1-1 instead of 3-4-2-1. So we still kept the back 3. We still kept our wing backs. We kept our 2 in central midfield, and all we did was lose one of our 10s, which is fair enough. I just thought it meant they were able just to control the game. And, with 11 players versus 10, there's always going to be an element of that. But I thought we allowed it to be a bit too easy for them, if that makes sense. I'd probably preferred if we'd have then morphed into something like a 4-4-1, and then you could have just left Armstrong, and then they hit our bank of 4 in midfield earlier in their possession phase. It might be a little bit more risky, but as I think
you made a point there, Fevs. You made a point there, Fevs. We made it too easy for them. We made it too easy for Leeds as well the other day. We didn't give them a game. Oh, never mind making it too easy. We shot ourselves in the foot with the sending off, which we'll come on to. Let's get into the early action, because I know we're all sort of reasonably pressed for time. We want to do a hard stop after an hour on this. Early doors, Brewster set up Campbell, Max O'Leary save. They were raining in on our left-hand side, more weak shot. But you first, Dave Tovey, their disallowed goal on 10 minutes, Tyrese Campbell with a header. I've looked at it. Can't see a lot wrong with that. And the referee, I thought VAR was in existence, because it was sort of like the cheer from the Atio stand. And then, the goal was disallowed. How did you see it? And was it right that it was disallowed?
I thought it was a brilliant decision, to be honest. The first thing that I'm more concerned with is it leads into the rest of the game. I believe it's the first header won in the box, but we kept losing headers. We kept losing aerial duels. I don't know how many times Kiefer Moore one flick-ons, one headers, one knockdowns, but it seemed to be every single time. It was way higher than you would normally expect from a centre forward. But in terms of the decision itself, it's not so much about whether Knight could get the ball, but he was denied the opportunity. I can't tell you for sure if he would have got there or not, but the Sheffield United player was offside and he was denied the chance to even try. And I think it's a great decision. And the reason I think it's delayed is because it's so much later on and the assistant referee does need a bit of time to make the decision. But it is a great decision and I think it's completely right.
And they must have been talking on their earphones because there was no running out. There was no shades of England's third goal in the World Cup final in '66 where he runs across the Russian linesman. You're nodding your head there, Fevs, that you think it was the right decision to disallow that.
Yeah, I think, the linesman didn't have a nice little white slimline belt on either, did he? Like the Russian linesman, but I never quite understood why the linesman was wearing a belt with a pair of shorts. But hey ho. Peck's just gone offside, hasn't he? Simple as that. And if you look at the linesman at the end, he stood there actually on the goal line with his flag there, so he's saying it's offside on the goal line, which is I guess where it is. I guess you could have said actually that the offside was on the 6-yard line because that's where Peck was when the ball got headed. But I think he was definitely trying to intimate to the crowd that he was giving it for offside, not for anything else. And he's denied Knight the opportunity to clear it. I think probably Knight would have got past him and cleared it. So I think right decision by the linesman.
Fevs, I'll stick with you. I call it the champagne moment of the season. If it had gone in, it would have been replayed time and time again, like the David Noble, Lewis Kerry goals up at Palace back in 2008. But and we were enjoying a good period of action. They always looked threatening on the break, did Sheffield. But that shot of Joe Williams from just outside the box, it was could have been Windass-esque if it had gone 4 inches lower.
Yeah, I think that's what you call a thunder bastard, isn't it? There was a hell of a strike, and it was past Cooper before he dived. Really, his dive was kind of for effect, if nothing else. And it was a shame. I think Mehmeti had done well down the left hand side. He turned Brewster inside out and then come back across and laid a ball across. And super strike. And I think it could have been very different off that. That's the small margins, isn't it? Probably 2 inches lower, and it goes in off the underside of the bar.
And then it's a very different game, isn't it? Yeah, from that perspective. Dave Tubbs, that goes in. It is a different game because everything that follows is different to what actually did follow.
I was thinking of it as like a rasping handbreaker. If your keeper gets a hand on that, the hand is probably broken. He hit it so hard. And you're absolutely right, because in that first 35 minutes, maybe 40 minutes, Sheffield United were showing a lot of signs of danger. But it was a gritty, lively, enjoyable playoff game. We were in it, and it's not one goal changes everything, because sometimes that's how games are. You get that goal, everything about the whole thing, just the element of the game changes, and an inch changes playoffs. And boy, did it change yesterday's trajectory. It would have been a generational talking point goal, that's for sure. But it wasn't.
I thought they were a little bit nervous, Dave. Sheffield United. There was a few kind of like hurried clearances and things like that, and balls kind of kicked up in the air. I thought for once certainly the first 20 minutes, and then they got a little bit more into it and things like that. But I thought we were kind of shading it if
we were getting into the game. They looked dangerous on the break, and they had a lot of physicality up front. Kiefer Moore is everything and more than Sinclair Armstrong isn't. Yeah, we don't want to pick out individuals, but I'm afraid we will when we get into the second half. But what a blow it was. I'll stick with you, Fevs, and then come back to you, Dave T, later. But Joe Williams, he got injured. He wanted to come off, and he was sort of almost made to stay on. And then he did a pass. It was a good pass, and then broke down. I gather he left the ground on stitches last night. And if we had still been in the game at 1-0, even 2-0, if we'd have gone up there with a 2-0 deficit, that extra 5 minutes that he stayed on and that pass that maybe pulled something, he could have missed the second game, which he's definitely going to do. But what was going on there that, he wanted to come off? Why not? You got an able replacement in McGuane for that midfield destroyer role.
I don't think he did want to come off. I thought he was signalling like, no, I'm not coming off, because I think he had Murphy ready, didn't he? So I think he wanted to stay. I said to Dave before the thing started, I think Williams' injury was probably the major turning point in that first half. Whilst he went down the first time and before he'd gone down the second time, I said to the guy next to me, Sheffield United had started winning all the loose balls. And I think that's probably because Joe was struggling. Suddenly Peck and Sousa were picking up the ball in midfield off of, headed clearances or little miscontrols and things like that. And I thought they just started to get on top. And then obviously Joe went down a second time and came off. Yeah, he walked past my van in the car park last night on crutches and a protective boot. So I'm suggesting he's going to be out of the next one. I'm glad it's not a kind of hamstring or anything like that. Hopefully it's just a big whack to the ankle or something that he's got. Yeah. So.
And bringing Earthy on for him when you're almost the obvious sub would have been McGuane, would it not? Just to put a bit of steel.
I have to say I felt it was the right sub to do and bring Earthy on in that moment, and the reason is because I felt we were like I said before, we were lively, we were gritty in that first 35. It was a good performance, but what did we actually do to test their keeper? Yes, we had the shot from outside the box, but as the home side in the first half of the playoff, you do want a bit more going forward. And I felt like we were in the game, but if there was a moment to try and go for it, it was then. But we did lose a bit. That is also true. But I had no complaints with the sub at the time.
No, I think it was the right. So probably Dave, it just probably confirms that he probably would have liked to have played 12 players, wouldn't he? He'd have liked to have probably played Earthy, Mehmeti and Bird as 10s, and in the end he brought Bird back in, whatever. I thought it was the right sub to make as well.
You did. Okay, well, 5 minutes of time were added on, mostly due to the head injury suffered by Ross McCrory, who I thought had a very good first half, but in the darkness, it does seem to be the Dolman Sands side of the pitch. He didn't seem to feature quite as much in that second period. And late in, or 2 minutes into that time added on, again, the defining moment, Dickey on Moore. I've seen it 3 or 4 times. Although I said Langford got it wrong. Wrong in the sense that it shouldn't be double jeopardy because a yellow card and a pen is usually enough. But I've seen it. The foul took place, then he played the ball. Is that how you saw it, Fevs? Right decision, having analysed it?
Unfortunately so, and unfortunately with Oliver Langford, who he's right on the bottom of my shit list. He made the right decision. The really kind of frustrating thing about it is anywhere, we normally say things like anywhere else on the pitch and he gives a foul, but he didn't give a penalty. I think this is the one example where they do it the other way round. I think if you people who are watching, if you kind of get your arm on someone and then make a challenge and win the ball, the ref don't give a free kick outside the box, but for some reason they do give it on a penalty. They give a penalty on there, and I think it's the rules, laws, whatever they are, letting the officials down on that point. I think it's just the rules are wrong. It was they were applied right. I just think the ruls are wrong on that one. And I've got no arguments with it at the time.
I'll stick with you, Dave, just on that point, Dave Fevs. In the build-up to the goal, there were a couple of what I would call robust. When I say the build-up, I'm talking the phase of play. Probably in the 30 seconds to a minute leading up to the goal, there were 2 free kicks that weren't given to us, where our players were clearly knocked off the ball. And I'm not saying that's why we conceded the pen, but there seemed to be he was giving the Sheffield team the benefit of the doubt on some of those 50-50 challenges.
Yeah, he's just a bad referee, isn't he? He'll give some of those and he won't give some of those. You never get any consistency out of him, and therefore, there's always contention in games that he referees. And I've been watching him referee long enough to know that a lot of the time we're the team that come off worse out of it. I think the ball that gets played forward into Campbell, you see Dickey and Tanner confused who's going for it. That's what creates the problem. There's a ball in there. Dickey starts to go for it, and then Tanner starts to go for it. Neither of them go for it, and the flick on then puts Moore in. The worrying thing is obviously Moore shouldn't be bursting past our defenders. You know,
well, it's the term you use. Dave
I'd
Tubbs.
have let him take the shot, and if it went in 1-0 down, but we
Say
still
la
got
vie,
11.
but you still got 11 men on the pitch. Yeah, Tubbs. Dave Fevs just said Kiefer Moore bursting past. I mean, Kiefer Moore doesn't exactly move like lightning, and Dickey we know is prone. But take us through that incident as you saw it. The right decision or not?
For me, it wasn't shocking to see an incident like that, because you've got the flick on in the box early on for the goal that was disallowed. They get in behind 3 times in the space of in 10 minutes. And when you're getting in behind, when you're winning flick-ons, you keep asking questions. And if you look at what actually happens, like Fev said, the header is essentially a free header. And if it keeps happening again and again and again, and you keep getting in behind you, eventually you're going to make a mistake. In my opinion, again, the referee got it spot on. I understand what you're saying about other incidents and how that ref can drive you crazy, but he pulls him. He wraps his arms around him, and I don't think that's an attempt to play the ball. That's a foul. Afterwards, he tries to play the ball, and that's a contract. For me, it's a red card. And it's one of those that he's one-on-one with the keeper. You're behind him. You can't wrap your arms around someone from behind and say, oh, I was going for the ball, because you're not. No. So I think it was a red card, and Dickey made a mistake.
You get those one arm around him, or kind of trying to get your arm in front of him.
Yeah, both arms around him, didn't he?
Yeah, that's the issue. It's not like you're not like shoulder to shoulder, or you haven't. If you get like side to side with someone and you get your arm there, fair enough. But when you're quite literally behind them, as soon as you do that, you're asking for deep trouble. And as soon as he did it, it's like, well, that's a red card. And you don't need to do that. But when you're under so much pressure, and that defense was under a lot of pressure, you make those types of mistakes.
Yeah, no, not good. And Langford seemed to relish brandishing the card, when he pulled it out. But on hindsight, no point in the decision was made, and we were down. And I think I'm right in saying this, that Rob Dickey was sent off in the home fixture at the tail end of last year, wasn't he? But Langford does like giving us red cards, because there was the two at Oxford, wasn't there, early in the season? Darms picked up a point here, and we could have left it to the end of the game, but let's bring it up now. Dave Fevs, Manning, or the club, let's say the club, through the official channels, objected to Oliver Langford taking charge. And Manning, after the game, who's usually very mild-mannered, he described him as a disgrace. So, beforehand and then the afters, what's your comment on that?
Yeah, it was on the BBC Radio Bristol interview with Liam last night. He basically said before, a week ago, or whenever the refs were announced, they went back to the EFL and, raised their concerns, not just about, the Oxford game earlier on in the season, but some of the decisions he's made in recent games as well. The sending, there's been a couple of red cards he's issued which have been rescinded. So they felt that, his competence was in question, I'd say. But I think he called him a disgrace.
Was it Luton Coventry? To be honest, Coventry Luton, he made a mistake or something.
Yeah, wrong identity kind of thing. And you just, he's just a bad ref at the end of the day. And most refs who are any good end up getting into the Premier League because, referees drop out the top end of the Premier League and they have to be replaced. The fact that Oliver Langford spent so long in the Championship really just shows how inept he is. So, I don't
what do you think?
For having a good old rant as well. I think fair play to get off your chest. No point criticising players, even if we want to criticise Rob Dickey. That's not going to help him, is it?
No.
Blame someone else.
Look, Rob Dickey, I say he let his teammates down. Will he take a long time to get over it? Probably not. Not like if you missed a penalty at Wembley, which we're not going to have to go through that shenanigans. Sorry, Tubby, Dave, your thoughts on Manning's or the club's objection to the referee, not just based on his performances against us, but on other decisions that he's made in such an important game. And as somebody else has said on here, again, in the dressing room, you hammer it home to the players, surely not, that do not give him the opportunity to have to make a bad decision. So, Dave, your thoughts?
I think that, first of all, I was surprised they came out and said that they'd objected. Because now you've done that, what are you going to do in future? They're going to back down to your requirements? No, they can't be seen to do that. They're going to give you those referees. Keep it in-house. I've no issue with the complaint, but don't put it out wide. And it's a bit like when you're frustrated with your partner and then you have a go at her or him for the wrong reasons. That's essentially what he's done yesterday, because we can talk about the different decisions, but the 3 players that we've had sent off from him this season, in my opinion, they were all the right decision. He also sent off someone against Sunderland, in my opinion, again, the right decision. So he can be a terrible ref, but don't highlight the decision that, again, in my opinion, he gets right.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think it's picking the wrong moment to have a go at him. And if he'd come out and said he got that decision right, but over the whole game I thought he was not very good, fair enough. But he was specifically about that decision as though we were hard done by. And I really don't feel like we were.
Okay. Half-time comes. How did you feel at half-time, Fevs?
I hope that we'd give it a go in the second half. That was I
so
thought
give it a
1-0
go
down.
rather than damage limitation.
Well, both, Dave, because I think you can go and score as well. I hoped we wouldn't get any worse than 1-0, so I didn't expect us to play with gay abandon or anything like that.
No.
But I was expecting more of an effort, especially like kicking into the safe stand as well. If you could get a bit of momentum going, and we didn't.
No. Dave, Tubby, how did you feel at half-time?
At half-time, it felt like this is what we've waited 17 years for, and now it's really at risk in this second half. If you'd have offered me 1-0 at half-time, I would have said, thank you very much, we move on. But for me, it was a bit of a false dawn in that second half, the first 20 minutes. It was like Sheffield United didn't know where to stick or twist. They weren't quite sure where to push on or risk it. And then they kind of turned on the power gears, But at halftime, to be honest, at halftime, I actually felt like, you know what? The first half, I knew the red cards come, but we actually played okay. It's just that one decision is a playoff changer.
No, that's it. And the triple substitution by Chris Wilder, wily old fox that he is, that did make a difference. Dave, the second goal for them on 73 minutes. Take us through it as you saw it. Soft defending or well-worked goal?
A bit of both, really. I think those subs he made, he brought on O'Hare, who's a real lively player. I think, if I go back to the first half, very much kind of we're going to play a rigid, effectively like 4-4-2, 4-2-4, and everyone knows what they're going to do. As Dave mentioned earlier, they're going to play a little bit direct. We probably didn't talk about this bit. They're probably going to play over our press or our block at times and go into Kiefer Moore, and they did that really well. The subs were basically, that was all okay against 11 men. City playing how we expect them to do, but actually the game's changed now, so I need to change. And he brought on O'Hare, so who's lively. Brought on Tom Davis, who's lively. Did he bring on Brooks, didn't he? To play out on the wing, and effectively what he then got was he got all of his central movement and lots of fluidity in the middle, and they were popping balls off of each other, and that was really the change from Wilder that went on and created the second goal. I think I'd probably give credit. It's a hell of a pullback from, I think it was Burrows going down.
Burrows, and then O'Hare did a little dummy.
That's the beauty of the pullback from the 18-yard line. Not crossing from another 20 yards wider. That's what you get. You get better chances from that, and so it was a bit of a kick in the teeth, really. But good goal, good finish.
The goal itself is one of those. First of all, they had 3 players in the box, which is easier to do when you have 10 men, but they have committed to it. The dummy itself is the chaos and the clarity of thought introduced. Because when you see the ball coming across, as soon as that dummy happens, we're all over the place. There is an argument that perhaps McCory could have done better and he didn't need to be sucked so far in. But as soon as that dummy happens, you don't know if that second player is getting there. He kind of goes for it to draw McCory in. He's then got the space, and there's really nothing Max can do from that. The ball's past him. He actually does very, very well just to get a hand to it, because it's past him and he gets his hand out. But realistically, there was nothing he could do.
I think just going on to the pullback as well. What the pullback gives you is it gives you defenders running towards goal and not able. They're trying to cover the ball across the 6-yard box, and the ball back, and you can't do both. And effectively, that's advantage striker, isn't it? And and they took it.
Yeah. By that time, we'd made I meant to mention this earlier. We made double substitution at half time. Roberts coming on for the ineffective U, and then Armstrong for Wells. Let's talk about. We could save it to the end, but let's talk about it now. I thought Naki looked okay. He did a particularly good piece of work in the corner flag. When under pressure, like against Preston, he was a little man up amongst in the land of the giants sort of thing. But Armstrong came on. I thought, well, I sort of see the logic in that. You're going to play it long and try and get him to chase it down. But look, let's be fair. I'll start with you, Dave. Well, let's be blunt. He was crap. I mean, he put in a showing last night that, he should not be playing at championship level football, period. He's had his chances. I may be being harsh, Dave. Fevs?
A little bit, yeah. I think you're on a hide into nothing, really, aren't you? My assumption is that he brought Naki off to save his legs for Monday night in case there's still a game to be won. But I think the problem is that we play into Sinclair Armstrong like he's a target man, and he's not. His strengths are going and rolling his man and running into the channels, and unfortunately, the first couple of channel balls we got him down onto, he got given fouls against him, and that kind of put him off wanting to do that after that. And one of them was a foul by Robinson on him, and suddenly they get a free kick. That's an example of Oliver Langford, just being completely inconsistent. So, yeah, I think he's the way Liam Manning wants to play with one striker isn't conducive to Sinclair Armstrong's strengths, and therefore you can take this all the way back and say, what the hell were recruitment doing? This isn't a formation thing.
Yeah, here's one for you, Dave.
We're playing. Liam Manning's only ever played one striker. Yeah, and we signed a bloke who isn't really
he's not proven.
It's not about proven, Dave. It's about he's not someone who's going to play up there on his own. That's not his strengths. It's not how he played at QPR. QPR, he played off of someone in the main and created a bit of chaos. But
yeah, Dave Tovey, Fev thinks I'm being a little bit harsh, but just his body language and his movement, his intelligence off the ball. You're almost like, I said to Tom, who was with me, I said, it's almost like we're playing with 9 men, because he couldn't hold the ball up. But what did you think of his performance? And I'll throw this one at you. Harry Cornick's on the bench. We all know Harry Cornick can run around a bit, put in a long throw, and half an hour of Harry Cornick, which, couldn't have been any worse than half an hour of Sinclair Armstrong, or 45 minutes, sorry.
I saw the logic in the sub. I understood it. I think Fevs has put it very eloquently. The issue is that he's not a target man in that respect. He much prefers running in the channels. And what you saw, and it's not the only time this season, when he plays and tries to be a target man, he has a habit of going down and not getting decisions. He has a habit of giving away fouls, even when he's literally trying not to. He doesn't seem to understand or have the quality to play that role. I think that yesterday you're being harsh because ultimately you do have 10 men, and what are you expecting from your striker? If you think about the teams that we've played recently when they've had 10 men, what have we actually seen from their centre forwards? Not a lot. It's very difficult when you're alone against 2 or maybe 3. So there is that slight mitigation, but I also don't think he brought a lot yesterday. I don't think he is good enough. He's clearly not good enough for this level. He had a slight uptick in form, around about January, February, where you saw slight signs, but signs aren't enough. Signs aren't enough. Ever since he missed that chance in the away game against Sheffield United, he's not been the same player. He just hasn't been. That just knocked his confidence completely, and now he's gone back into his shell. He doesn't have that arrogance of a player that you feel like he's going to bring something to a game. He just seems to be frustrated all the time, and for me, he's not championship quality. And if you do want to maintain this level going forward, you really have to ask yourself: Are you going to pursue this, or are you going to dip in and try and find another striker?
Fevs, Pring's on the bench unexpectedly, although there was a hint that he might be. We know Sykes was nowhere near with his injury. Would you have been tempted to bring him on?
No,
or not at all?
No, I think it's too big a risk. I think I heard Gary Hours on after the game saying, gonna have to risk him in the second leg and things like that. I wouldn't risk anyone now. I wouldn't want to delay anyone's recovery going into next season.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, Keynesy, I do get your point though. Parachute payments are unjust, but I was just being facetious.
Well, try telling that to Coventry if they go up, because they've not had parachute. They've not had parachute payments. But there we go. We did have a shot on target in the second half at Dave Tubby. A shot from Mehmeti that was as weak as piss, to be quite honest. And him and Tanner in the build-up to the second goal, Tanner almost turned away when Burrows put in that cross. These aren't players that have got hearts of a lion when you need hearts of a lion out on the pitch. But Mehmeti, he just rolled that to the bloody keeper.
There are two things that you've done there, and I think to address them both. Tanner, we've discovered yesterday that at the highest level he's not a right centre back. Ultimately, when it comes to teams, and thanks to Luton that have opened the door to everybody else, we've now been targeted as a weak link that you can beat if you put balls over the top. People can dismiss it, but it's part of football, and it's what makes football such a beautiful game, is that there's more than one way to play it. I felt Tanner was isolated yesterday. He is a right back by nature. Everything I see in him, he is a supportive player to a winger getting forward. The way that he gets forward, the way that he puts in crosses. If you have that type of player as a right centre back, he's going to get dominated against a Kiefer Moore type player. Kiefer Moore knew exactly what he was doing. He's like, I'm going to try and pull off on Tanner as often as I can because I'm going to win the ball. And the other pacier players were like, well, Vider's where the space is, so we're going to attack that place. They knew exactly what they were doing. And Wilder's favourite phrase, they did a job on us in that respect. I'm not going to question our energy. I'm not going to question our passion. It's not about that. It's just players have been found out that there are levels in this game. And last night, some of them figured out what they were when you are put in a position because you can fill in that role. And they were found wanting, and it's not a surprise. In terms of the Mehmeti effort, it was weak, but he's been like that for a few months now. He kind of had his peak, and then he's gone back into the player he was. He has regressed as the season has gone on, and it's disappointing to see.
I think he manoeuvred the ball well, and I thought it was a crisp enough shot. The problem was it was straight down Cooper's throat. I think if it goes to the corner, it probably goes in Dave's. So I think well, it wasn't a powerful shot, but it was, he struck it okay. I thought he was relatively, in an overall, under par team performance, probably because of Tevin. I thought he did all right last night. I think our biggest problem was, I think you mentioned earlier, Dave P, that McCrory, didn't shine under the dull lights of the dolmen or something as poetic as that. But that's because we still try to. I don't know whether we were trying to play football across the back to try and suck time out the game, but for me, I'd have just did Diags to McCrory. McCrory, Chowdhury had a pretty hard game against him.
He did. First half in particular. I mean, that's why I said Ross McCrory
was the outlet. Hit done. Let Ross McCrory batter him in the air. And that's when you get, Armstrong just maybe feeding off bits and pieces, or Mehmeti picking up a loose ball, and suddenly you're at their defence rather than trying to play through their midfield. That's the bit I felt. Manning was too rigid with. We still tried to play phased build-up football, and it needed banging it forward and hoping you might get a break. Who knows? Armstrong might turn Amahodzic or Robinson and get tugged back, and they're down to 10 men. But we never found out, and that was what was disappointing for me.
Well, you just said it there, Dave. Fevs, Manning, he has a particular way of playing, and there's no flexibility because there's all sorts of things. Somebody else has said, on Monday, just play all the fit players. But if you've changed things round a bit, and you do go to a 4, and you could line up on Monday at Bramall Lane with nothing to lose. You could play Tanner in his rightful position. You could play Viner and Dickey and give the lad Morrison a go at left.
Not unless you get to.
Sorry, you won't have Viner. Okay, so you're all right. You've got to play Viner, you could play Viner and Pring as a central two. Yeah. Okay, if Pring can come through. And then you could play Morrison in his rightful left back position. You've still got then find a place for Ross McCrory. Ross McCrory playing.
Mr. P,
Yeah.
one thing, Mr. P. A couple of seasons ago, we would see all of this stuff on social media about how our academy players are scoring all the goals. Well, that was because the academy players were basically the whole team. It's not a surprise. What you're seeing now is there's this thing online of, wow, Bristol City have got 2 or 3 players that have played every game this season. Well, there's a reason for that. You know, the squad is supposedly small by design. We got rid of players in January. We got weaker. I think I heard yesterday Sheffield United signed 7 players in the summer.
Yeah,
now I understand with
yeah.
I get that with parachute payments that there's certain things you can and cannot do, but to get rid of 3 players, to not bring any in, and then say, oh, we have injuries. Well, there's a shock. Where are the injuries coming in? Sykes, who we missed massively.
We're lucky that Knight or Viner haven't got injured with the workload they've put through, aren't we?
Exactly. And if you're playing wing backs and Sykes gets injured, Sykes has been a very pleasant surprise in playing that position, I must say. After that, who are your 2 options essentially now? They are you and they are Tanner, because McCrory keeps scoring goals on the left. But in a way, McCrory playing there finds a solution to the problem he creates, because he makes the pitch smaller. He doesn't put in crosses. And as Fev said, the way to beat them yesterday was to go high, because ultimately to beat them in the air was the way we were going to have to do it. There are many little decisions that have been made through the season, not necessarily evolving with different formations, not trying Morrison. The recruitment at the start, where was Twine yesterday, for example? You know, that was missing. You know, our investments from summer didn't appear yesterday.
Totally.
Armstrong didn't do anything.
No.
Exactly.
Well,
it's little things all season that led to that. And we did stumble over the line.
Yeah.
And then basically, welcome to a nightmare.
Dave, tell me, look, let's be fair. Look, I mean, you both of you have used the word stumbled, but let's look at things since the beginning of April. You know, we beat Watford and West Brom. That was great. You know, that last-minute winner of Hayden Roberts, and I think Naki Wells scored in that, or was it suddenly? Naki's got 1 goal in 7. That's been the bloody problem, goal scoring. But we stumbled. 2-1 Watford, 2-1 West Brom. Decent away point. Played against Sunderland against 10 men, 2-1. Yeah. And then after Sunderland, you know, it has really gone to rat shit.
There's been many things hiding in plain sight. We have two clean sheets since we played Wolves. You know, these 2-1 comebacks, they are emotive, they are energetic, they bring an emotion from football. But they hide the point that you keep conceding goals, and you can't keep going to the well. Like, I did not watch that first half yesterday thinking, wow, we are a really secure unit. And football is a balance. You need to attack, you need to offer something going forward, but you need to feel like you're relatively safe. Yeah. I felt like we played well in that first half. Apart from Williams' rasping drive, what else did we truly offer? Not a lot.
Not a lot.
And that for me is the issue. And I don't necessarily put it at Manning's door. I don't put it at the players' door. I put it at a whole season was leading up to that moment, because the squad is actually too small. You can't get by on that. And some of that's Manning's fault because he hasn't introduced Morrison as example. Some of that is the transfer policy because the transfers were not good enough.
Yeah, I just want to say here, there's a Leeds fan who's on our chat feed here. No smoke without. Look, go away. Yeah, let us bask in our own failure and just get off. I'd have blocked you if I'd have worked out which button.
Before you move on, Fevs, you were going to say something to counter me. I think
we haven't got a small squad. You know, in terms of registered players, senior players. We've got a middling size squad. I went through all the registration lists. We've got, I think it's 22 players. Some teams like Sunderland have got 18 registered players. That's because they backfill, and admittedly they've got some bloody good young players as well, but they backfill with their academy or with their young players, or they've signed young players who don't have to sit in the senior registration. But that's a choice by us. You know, is it any coincidence that we've hit injuries to players who are possibly a bit fragile on injury stakes, and we've played them. We've brought them back too quickly, and then they break down again. You know, Sykes, Pring, they've all missed chunks of periods this season, because I think, you know, and I don't want to, you know, Liam's done a decent job. Let's get that out there first of all. But he's also, you know, whether rightly or wrongly, he chases results, and I think he chases results with players' fitness to some extent. You know, there's too many players in red zone by the looks of it, and that showed over the last few weeks. And it's been a monumental effort to get into the playoffs, but it's come at a cost. It's come at a cost of playing players over and over again, and they've broken down, or you know, they've lost their spark.
Yeah, no,
and I think to some degree we can talk about, well, this is a real positive for going forward to next season, but you never know what next season brings, you know. And yeah, I understand it. We're in the playoffs after so many years. We're there again, but you have to have eyes on winning them every time. And you might not have to beat first, second, and third over the course of a season, because, you know, look at first and second this season. But once you're there, you've got to win one of them. And ultimately, first of all, we didn't have to finish sixth. Fifth was in our hands. And second of all, we just do not have the level of squad in terms of quality to beat that players. And what I saw yesterday ultimately was a gap. And that gap, how you bridge that gap over the summer, is the next question we have to talk about. And I know the season's not done, but it fills it.
Yeah, that's a podcast all by itself, really, isn't it? You know, what happens in the summer, we're going to do that. I mean, the third goal, it went in 79 minutes, Hamer corner, Sousa header, O'Hare tap in. I think by that time, 12,000 of the 25,000 crowd had left. I did stay until the 89th minute, you know, and it was people were streaming out of Ashton Gate. Can I say two things?
Yeah. Before you move on to the goal, the crowd. I thought the crowd was fantastic. On television, it really shined through. The atmosphere and the build-up, getting behind the team. I thought they were incredible. I've seen a few comments online about people leaving early. People do what they do in football, you know. Not everybody wants to stay at the end. For me personally, I'm someone that when I do go to a game, I'm not going to leave early. Yeah. But when you watch football, sometimes it hurts. And I fully understand why people do not want to be in that stadium anymore. And I don't blame them if they choose to go. No. Not for me, but I get it.
Fevs.
Just a quick question, and this is my ignorance here, so I didn't want to put my foot in it. So, okay, Red Army on the Dolman stand. Was that some army sign in the South stand, or was it a flag of Japan? And it's my ignorance.
The Red Army, it looked like a Japanese flag to me.
That's what I thought, but then someone said, "Oh, it's the RAF sign."
And then somebody did say what you've just said, something to do with the RAF. Perhaps somebody on the text feed.
Yeah. And I know the RAF's got the target, and you know, which the mods have used. But I didn't know. I just wanted to ask the question because I didn't know.
And the build-up, I mean, the pre-match atmosphere.
So if anyone knows, then put it in the text.
The pre-match atmosphere was really great. I mean, the Red Army across the whole of the Dolman, whoever organised that, well done.
Top notch. That was really cool. And that's the kind of thing that, you know, like you said, they've had a campaign to raise some funds, because that's what you want to see more of. That's what creates an atmosphere. And people have talked many times about, oh, there's not much of an atmosphere. What you saw yesterday was actually there is. In many, many games, and Section 82 have done an incredible job of generating that with the momentum that's being built. In terms of the goal, because I'm sorry, I sidetracked it. Again, third game in a row, corner. How many times are we going to not learn about defending that? It's hard when you lose your main centre back, but we are losing too many headers in our own box. And it didn't start yesterday. It's been a build-up. Preston scored from it. They scored from it. There are too many goals through a season. We have to tighten up in that respect, no doubt.
For those that haven't seen it on the text feed, the red circle at the South Stand was the RAF emblem for VE Day. Just to get back on what you were saying there, Dave, something that you were saying, I think if we'd have played Earthy from the start instead of the person that probably did skew with the amount of money involved our transfer budget, if we'd have played Earthy from the start against Preston, you know, we could well have been playing tonight, and you know, we may not have gone 2-0 down. So again, selection problems. I mean, our top side.
Why do you think
on the pitch last night?
Fevs, why do you think that he did choose Mehmeti over Earthy? What logical reason do you come up with that he's chosen that? Because I don't get it. Like, I think Earthy's been fantastic, and to do that in the biggest game of the season, why?
Maybe because he brings a bit of dribbling, probably more than what Earthy does. I was surprised as well. I hadn't even noticed it on the team sheet until someone mentioned it when I was in the ground. So yeah, I don't know, Dave. I think you could argue why did he play Twine on Saturday?
Yeah. And can we just take a moment as I've just asked you that question from Earthy. If you'd have asked me 3 months ago that I would be saying, why wasn't he playing? I would have been shocked. That shows you to me his level of performance over the last few months.
Yeah,
he's been great.
When Earthy first came here, I think he played a couple of games early on the season. I thought, wow, what an intelligent player. And I thought it's only a matter of time before he gets in the team. And if I've said this on the pod before, apologies, but I thought he was going to be like Jeffrey Boycott. Once he got in, you wouldn't get him out. But in fairness, he didn't really deliver, did he? Until post Christmas, and probably the Borough game was probably the making of him. But since he got back in the team, he's been a pretty instrumental part of that dynamic of Bird and Earth and himself in the 10 positions behind Naki Wells, and I think generally it's worked most games, and I was surprised he didn't start yesterday.
No, all right, Dave. Fevs, I'm conscious of your time.
I'll go right up to the wire, Dave. Okay, I've just
in about 5 minutes. So yeah, just drop off right on the wire. Look, barring a miracle, it is a miracle we need on Monday. You look back in the records, and and it will show this season we achieved the playoffs. I was looking at results at the weekend. Another reason why I felt flat, and I saw Bournemouth winning at the Emirates 2-1, Brentford beating Man United 4-3, Brighton 1-0 up for a long time, or against Newcastle. And I really thought, this season maybe it is our time. Next season, a couple of questions for both of you. You first, Dave. Will Jason Knight be a Bristol City player on the opening game of next season? Will Liam Manning still be manager? Tubby.
Okay,
yes.
first.
Tubby.
Okay, Fevs, you go. Me first. Okay.
Go on, Dave. Go, Dave T.
Today I feel quite down, quite miserable. For me, once we get to Monday, for a while I'll still believe. I'll watch that game thinking a quick goal and anything can happen. Football's like that. History is made from these moments. The stories don't just happen. Normally there's this, and generational is what we're talking about. But while I don't believe right now, come Monday, I will believe anything is possible. To answer your question, Jason Knight, it depends. If there's no contract, the answer would be no. Manning, I think at the beginning of next season. I think personally, after what happened yesterday, he may have a feeling of unfinished business. And it happens sometimes in the way you lose. And he may feel as though, you know what, I want another crack at it with this club. Yeah, in a way, how you lose, and losing like that leaves a taste that you feel, I can go better. And if we don't make a comeback on Monday, which we probably won't, I expect Manning to be the manager to start next season.
Okay, Fevs?
I was going to say, yes, I do expect Jason Knight to be here. I think, thankfully, and everyone knows I'm a big fan, his lack of goals might mean that we keep him for another season, because I think I'm not saying he'll go under anyone's radar. Everyone knows what a good player he is, but I think people, if they want to spend the kind of money that we might want for him, they won't want to pay it for a player who hasn't got the goals in him. I think he's capable of a lot more in that regard. Liam Manning, yes, I think he'll be here, because I honestly don't think any Premier League team is gonna take Liam Manning, or going to want to take Liam Manning. I'm not sure Leicester would sack Ruud van Nistelrooy for Liam Manning at this point in his formative Championship career either. So I'm not necessarily. I think there's some little stories being put out there. So I think Liam Manning will be manager here, because actually there is no job for him to go to, and that sounds a bit harsh, but I just think he's not quite there yet, and I don't see a big club taking a risk on him at this point.
Okay, all right. Well, look, I think we're done for today. I think this is going to be a very interesting summer, because how much money is going to be spent? Do we build on what we've got? Hope we avoid injuries. When will the youngsters get a chance? You know, Liam hasn't seemed to want to play them this season. Are the youngsters good enough? But our programme to wrap up the season, obviously we'll be doing a review of what is a dead rubber at Bramall Lane on Monday. It's very much, I know Radio Bristol was struggling they were ruining the fact they were on air till 11 o'clock last night. And I remember something similar back in the 1988 playoffs against Walsall, when we'd lost the right to play the deciding game at Ashton Gate on the Easter Bank Holiday Monday, and I was doing the stuff for GWR back then, and we'd secured full second half commentary, and we were 3-0 down after 20 minutes, which made that a bit of a dead rubber event. But we'll be reviewing Sheffield United Act 2. I think I'd be going off down the pub after Act 1. I wouldn't return for Act 2. I wonder how many of the people who bought tickets will actually be going up there. But we'll be reviewing Sheffield United Act 2 in the playoffs at 9 o'clock on Tuesday morning. And there will be copious numbers of end-of-season reviews with people like Gary Hours, Chris Honor, you, Dave Fevs, hopefully you, Dave Tovey, and hopefully when he's fit again, Mark Tovey, and others. But look, everybody who's tuned in this morning and watched it live, hopefully we haven't sounded too depressed, but, chin up. It's a bright, sunny day, and there's more to life than football, despite what Bill Shankly said. But everybody, see you all. Have a great weekend, and we'll try and bring some joy on Tuesday. All the best, everybody. Goodbye.
Ciao for now.